The Modi-Giuliani-Miller theorem states that under certain conditions, for example, the assumption there are no tax, the way a firm finances itself, whether through debt or equity, does not affect its total market value. For the Ricardian Equivalence theorem, it is analogous to the theorem. In this case, government should be indifferent between collecting taxes today versus raising debt of any maturity, given certain conditions and assumptions, because it doesn't affect the consumption and savings of individuals or the lifetime wealth. Analogous to theorem, government should be indifferent between collecting taxes today versus raising debt of any maturity. The way to think about this is that government collect tax to fund its spending. And any differences between the tax collection they collect today will be covered by issuing debt. So what the Ricardian Equivalence theorem is saying is that a matter of all taxes, which means there are no debt, versus collecting less taxes now and cover the existing spending with that, should not make any difference in terms of consumption or savings of individuals. The combination of consumption or savings of individuals is also known as the health of the individuals. Another way to look at this is that the government shouldn't be able to generate more wealth of individual playing with how much debt they raise, because taxpayers expect government debt to be eventually offset by future taxes. Given certain conditions that the individuals think rationally, they will save now, which will reduce consumption, to pay off future tax increase. And the different maturity just affect how much they will save now versus future, which means that if the government issue longer term maturity, they will just save lesser now versus shorter maturity, which they will save more now. But if you would to discount all these future tax payments to the present value, they will all be the same. So the net lifetime wealth would not change. So some of these conditions is that taxpayers smooth the consumption over time. This is the part where I talk about saving expected future taxes today. And that tax cuts now will result in future tax increases. And the usual assumption there are no transactional costs and taxpayers can freely borrow and lend in terms of the interest rate that used for discounting the expected future taxes back to the present value. Just now, as we say that the taxpayer can freely borrow and there are no transactional costs, but in imperfect capital markets, there are always costs and inefficiency associated with bond issuance and trading. So government can adjust their debt management strategies. For example, under normal market conditions, the interest rate or the yield to maturity are lower due to a liquidity premium, reflecting the ease which they can be bought or sold. For shorter term debt instruments, they are generally viewed as being more liquid than longer term instruments because they get back the cash faster, right? So there's this liquidity premium. Liquidity premium is a cost that is tagged to the issuance of these debt. So if you were to look at the strict adherence to Ricardian equivalence assumptions, other than the part about cost inefficiency, this would suggest that government would ideally just finance themselves with the shortest possible maturity, right? If you are telling me that in a sense, maturity doesn't actually affect the net consumption and savings, so as to minimize borrowing costs and avoiding to pay a liquidity term premium. However, similarly to the corporate bonds that we discussed previously, excessive reliance on short-term funding introduces rollover risk. And in reality, these assumptions are not strictly true. For example, taxpayers not perfectly solve consumption over time, nor do they, consistently, because of human behavior, anticipate future tax implications, right? Especially when you spend across generations, as government can borrow for periods that are longer than the current generation. So these uncertainty will result in fiscal instability, right? This uncertainty in future tax rate would result in fiscal stability, and this might pose risk to long-term economic stability and growth. So the way the government does is to just stagger these debt across the maturity spectrum, right? And this would ideally balance the higher costs due to the liquidity premium, but at the benefit of having lower fiscal instability. And other benefits for longer-term sovereign securities is that regular issuance of benchmark securities across various maturities help establish risk-free benchmarks. Because these risk-free benchmarks are used as a reference for other borrowers, this helps these other issuers to be able to better gauge how much they are able to borrow. And a lot of derivatives are based on these medium to long-term government securities, as these interest rate derivatives are used to help manage interest rate risk. So that the part about independently of credit risk is that they are just managing interest rate risk and doesn't include the credit risk, because by trading government securities or interest rate derivatives, they can only cover and manage interest rate risk. And also, longer term government securities are the preferred collateral in repo and derivatives transactions. Part of the reason why these longer term government securities are more preferred is because you do not want to have a short term collateral that are going to mature in the near future, and you have to keep rolling over them, right? Longer term government securities, it's easier for you to reuse them and to post them as collateral for longer term transactions as well. Also, central banks use government securities in monetary policy operations, such as the open market operations. And other countries hold these government bonds in their foreign exchange reserves due to the liquidity and the safety. So the liquidity part just means that they are able to buy and sell them easily. And the safety is the credit risk of the government for the respective currency is deemed the lowest.